4.5 questions for agnostics. And these questions are not meant to be antagonistic or hostile, but more rhetorical or for curiosity's sake. Mostly questions I've had, about it, listening to people talk about agnosticism, and that have prevented more or less me from adopting such a position, or in some cases, even depending on how it's expressed, making sense of it. Question one. Um, if you're an agnostic, by what method did you determine this, that you were an agnostic? Was it through a process of introspection, or did you hear a convincing argument, or did you have an experience of some kind that led you to this conclusion? So the methodology, not, avoiding the greater question of whether or not it's the case or we can know. How did you come to the conclusion that you were agnostic, or that agnosticism was true or valid or made sense? Number two, could you apply that same method, the method I'm asking about in question one, to the question of God or the question of the supernatural? And if you can't, why can't you? Is it something about God and the supernatural, or is it something about the method that's limited in some way? The third question I have is a different kind of question. It's kind of a loaded question because it's based on what I personally believe as an atheist, and that is number three. Do you think that it's possible or impossible that gods are fictions, or at least the organic creation of the human mind, or of human minds, like faeries or leprechauns and unicorns? If it's impossible that that's the case, I kind of like question one. I'd like to know why that is the case. There's something about our minds that couldn't invent a god or something like that, or something about God himself that makes him impossible. Number four, and I'll put some of these in the comments below so you can actually refer to them in text. Is it possible or impossible for us to establish the nature of fictions like Leprechauns and Unicorns, or Oliver Twist, or The Amazing Spider-Man? Is it possible for us to establish the nature of these things if they are indeed fictions? Or is it impossible to know? It could be really a guy in a red and blue suit, spinning webs and swinging off buildings, capturing criminals, and of course everybody would think those criminals are crazy. And Stan Lee's just his friend. There is no, Peter Parker's just an alias, and now Stan's in too deep. He's making so much money off this Spider-Man hoax, he can't go back. So he continues to pretend that he created Spider-Man when in fact Spider-Man's a real person. You can get agnostic about a lot of things, but I think it's because it is created, we can come to some kind of resolution. So if gods are created, I imagine that we don't have to retire on at least a hard agnostic position for sure. And the half question I have, because I don't really care how you answer it, or even if you answer it, but do you know who T.H. Huxley is? You know who Thomas Henry Huxley is, the guy who coined the term agnosticism? And what, if in any way, has he said that's informed your views? If you've never heard of him, obviously nothing. I imagine most people who call themselves agnostic do not know much about Thomas Huxley. He was a friend of Darwin. And as far as I can read, his version of agnosticism, Huxleyan agnosticism, is basically just scientific naturalism. So it doesn't seem to be much more than that. So I would imagine a lot of agnostics sympathize with that, but they don't leave it just at there. There's a greater philosophical claim being made, I would imagine, in the minds of most agnostics. So yeah, and a couple of points I wanted to make in addition to those 4.5 questions. Again, I'll post them in the bottom in some form or another that's legible, hopefully. But I would say that I distinguish hard and soft agnosticism in the same way I distinguish hard and soft atheism, in the sense that the hard atheist and the hard agnostic are making claims about the nature of the world or the nature of things in it, be they gods or people, whereas the soft atheist or the soft agnostic are making claims about their self and whether or not they believe something or they feel they're in a position to know something. And so I don't really have a problem with the soft agnostic position, but I do think that there's two agnosticisms, just like there's two atheisms. And I also wanted to point out that when you're arguing or talking to or discussing these kind of ideas with an atheist or a theist, as an agnostic, most of the time, their beliefs are not tied in any way to epistemology and how they know that they know things and all this kind of stuff. It's usually a metaphysical or an ontological argument. It's an argument about what's in the world and the nature of the world, or what do things mean and what is the nature of being itself. And these aren't necessarily how do we know these things questions, which may have led you to your agnosticism, but isn't the foundation of their theism or atheism. So make sure that you know that you're making an argument about knowledge where they might be making an argument about something other than how they came to know what they're saying to you. And you might have to come at it from a different angle for that reason. And just for the sake of argument or giving some space to it, I can definitely see, and I've heard before, theists argue against agnostics, that there's something about the nature of God or the nature of faith that defends them against the reality of agnosticism or the validity of the agnostic position, that God has power sufficient that he can give us true knowledge or certain knowledge in spite of our limitations, or that faith itself is in a different kind of category and isn't really amenable to these kind of epistemological criticisms. You'll hear that too. But I would say, from an atheist perspective, and I am pretty sure most agnostics would agree, that they don't do a very good job, theists, of demonstrating this quality of faith or this quality of God to either atheists or agnostics. They don't seem to be big on doing anything other than claiming that that's the case, and they don't really care about demonstrating this about God or about the nature of their faith. So I'm not very sympathetic to that position, but that's a theist argument I could put in there. So please, yeah, comments below. Obviously, you don't have to answer all these questions. A lot of them tie together, but I don't know if I was an agnostic how I could know that I was agnostic and not use that method of knowing that gives me enough confidence to say I am agnostic on the issue of God or the supernatural, that I couldn't shoot that at something else. And if I can come to self-knowledge at the level of being confident enough to say I have an understanding of my state of belief on an issue, I can use that introspective method to determine other things about what I believe and sometimes what other people believe in the nature of the world by just looking at the nature of myself and my own thought process. I hope my gear are down. I really, really do. Oh, they are. Yay. Okay. So we've landed safely. Well, not so safely. My God. All right. Well, the pilot's alive on the test craft. Since it blew up, I'll show you. You can have some spy photos. Otherwise, I'm not going to show you the nature of my craft. Not in this complete hole, but you can take some satellite photos here. Enjoy the questions. Comment, please. Like if you like this kind of stuff, and subscribe for more. I mostly do the news, but every once in a while you'll see a commentary like this. Hope this wasn't too long. Hope I didn't eat too much of your day. Have a good weekend. Fly safely.